The moment communication stops between two people, the atmosphere doesn't just go quiet, it transforms. Think of it as a sudden change in the gravity of your relationship. It's not a dramatic event like a loud argument or a breakup. It's a quiet, structural shift that alters how you both perceive one another. When the pings, notifications, and casual check-ins disappear, a vacuum is created. If you misunderstand this phase and react out of desperation, you risk losing more than just her attention. You risk losing your standing, which is the respect and value she holds for you. In this silence, your perceived strength is either built or broken based on how you handle the lack of contact. For most men, this transition triggers an immediate, almost instinctive surge of anxiety. It's that restless feeling where you find yourself checking your phone every few minutes, rereading your last few text messages to see if you said something wrong, and spiraling into what-if scenarios. You start wondering if she's already moving on or if she's forgotten about you entirely. This panic is a trap because it drives you to act impulsively just to stop the discomfort. However, you must realize that silence isn't an empty void or a sign of failure. It is a powerful psychological reset. It clears away the noise of daily habit and forces both of you to actually feel the weight of each other's absence. This reset creates a rare window for reflection and clarity that doesn't exist when you're talking every day. When you're constantly in touch, neither of you has the space to miss the other or to evaluate the relationship objectively. The silence forces her, and you, to look in the mirror. She begins to realize what life feels like without your energy, and you begin to see if your happiness is too dependent on her validation. But here is the catch. That clarity only works in your favor if you stay grounded. If you understand the psychology beneath the surface, you'll see that this quiet is actually the loudest part of the connection. It's the period where she decides if your presence is something she truly values or something she was simply used to having around. When you are constantly available, always the one to text first, always checking in, and always ready to respond within seconds, you become a certainty in her life. While being reliable sounds like a good thing, in the world of attraction, complete certainty can lead to a loss of interest. Safety and predictability are comfortable, but they don't capture the imagination. Human psychology is naturally wired to pay the most attention to things that are slightly out of reach or unpredictable. We tend to assign the highest value to things that feel scarce, simply because we don't have to worry about losing things that are always there. When you are a constant presence, she doesn't have to wonder about you, which means she doesn't have to think about you. By stepping back and stopping the constant flow of communication, you introduce a healthy level of tension into the dynamic. It is vital to understand that this tension isn't the same as a fight or a conflict. Rather, it is the psychological spark where attraction is either rebuilt or completely lost. This silence acts as a stress test for the relationship. If the only reason you two were talking was because you were doing 100% of the heavy lifting, the silence will immediately expose that imbalance. However, if there was a real mutual connection, your sudden absence does something powerful. It amplifies her curiosity. It shifts her from a passive role to an active one because she finally has the room to miss you. The biggest mistake men make is misinterpreting this quiet period as a personal rejection. While a man might see silence as a sign that she doesn't care, a woman often uses silence as a source of information to judge the strength of the connection. When the regular pattern of your attention breaks, she has to start asking herself questions she never had to consider before. She begins to wonder, why hasn't he reached out? Is he finally pulling away? Is he okay? Or has he found someone else? This internal dialogue is where the emotional investment actually grows. By providing her with the space to ask these questions, you allow her to realize your value on her own terms, rather than trying to force her to see it through a screen. The core of this strategy isn't about playing games or using tricks to fool someone. It's about what is known as emotional positioning. Think of it as the difference between being a steady anchor and a leaf blowing in the wind. In every period of silence, there is an unspoken test of who can handle the uncertainty better. Usually, the person who becomes anxious first is the one who loses the lead, because they lose control over their own emotions. When you feel that surge of fear and break the silence just to make yourself feel better, you are sending a loud, invisible message. You are essentially telling her, I am not okay without your reassurance, which signals that your happiness is dependent on her, not on yourself. True power in a relationship comes from the ability to remain calm and grounded when the lines go quiet. When you can exist in that space without rushing to fix it, you communicate something incredibly attractive. My world does not collapse without your constant validation. This isn't about playing hard to get or trying to punish her by ignoring her. It's about having enough self-respect to give her the space she needs while maintaining your own life. If you try to use silence as a weapon to hurt her or force a reaction, it will almost always backfire. You can't fake high-level emotional maturity for very long, and women are often very good at sensing when silence is a manipulative tactic versus when it is a sign of a man who is simply centered and secure. Ultimately, your goal during this phase is to observe rather than react. This period of quiet is a diagnostic tool that reveals the true foundation of your connection. If you are constantly trying to win or get her back, you aren't actually looking at the reality of the relationship. By being okay with the quiet, you give yourself the clarity to see if the two of you actually fit together without the constant distraction of digital noise. It's about having the inner strength to wait and see what happens when the pressure is off. This kind of grounded presence is rare, and it's exactly what sets a man of high value apart from everyone else who is scrambling for attention. When communication stops, the human brain naturally hates a vacuum. It feels a biological need to fill in the blanks. While you are remaining silent, her mind isn't just sitting idle, it is actively working to piece together the story of you. Because she is no longer getting new information from your texts or calls, she begins to dig through the old information she already has. She starts replaying your last few interactions, dissecting the tone of your voice, the timing of your messages, and the way you looked at her. In this state of absence, the clues of your past behavior become much louder and more significant. Things she might have ignored when you were always available, like your reliability or a specific joke you shared, suddenly stand out. She begins to realize that the small, consistent parts of your presence weren't just background noise. They were the very things she now misses. However, this silence doesn't just work on her. It acts as a powerful mirror for you as well. It forces you to look at yourself and answer a difficult question. Is my sense of self-worth actually mine, or is it something I've handed over to her? This period is a brutal test of where your roots are planted. If you feel your confidence crashing because your phone isn't buzzing, it's a sign that your value was tied to her replies rather than your own life. This is the moment where most men fail because they can't handle the reflection they see in the mirror. They start scrambling for answers, trying to force a conversation just to prove to themselves that they still matter to her. But a man who understands his own value doesn't need to chase an outcome. He knows that the result will take care of itself if he remains steady. Ultimately, the goal is to realize that your stillness is your most effective form of communication. When you don't rush to fill the void with just checking in texts or desperate questions, you are speaking a language of high-level confidence. You are showing her and yourself that you are a man who can handle uncertainty without losing his cool. High-value men aren't fueled by the dopamine hit of a notification. They are fueled by their own purpose and their own schedule. By remaining grounded in your own life during this quiet phase, you project an energy of strength that 1,000 desperate paragraph-long texts could never achieve. You aren't just waiting for her, you are living your life, and that independence is exactly what makes your presence feel heavy and important, even when you're not around. The turning point happens when the silence stops being a mere break and starts becoming an emotional economy check. Up until now, your presence was a given. It was free and always available. But once that supply of attention is cut off, she is forced to weigh the actual value of what she's lost against the reality of your absence. This isn't a logical calculation she sits down to do. It's an instinctual, gut-level realization. Because you aren't there to fill her day with good morning texts or constant check-ins, she is finally left alone with her own feelings. Without the pressure of your constant energy pushing for a response, she has the space to notice the gap you left behind. She begins to see the contrast between the days when you were around and the quiet of her life now, and that contrast is where true desire starts to rebuild. It is crucial to understand that this is the ultimate pivot point. Your absence is not a test designed for her, but a test of your own character. If you can stay independent and patient during this stretch, you move from being an option to being magnetic. When you are constantly messaging, you are just a notification on a screen, a contact she can deal with whenever she feels like it. But when you are silent and self-contained, you stop occupying her phone and start occupying her mind. You become a mystery she has to solve and a person she has to think about. This shift is vital because thought is the precursor to longing. When she has to think about you to find you, she begins to create a version of you in her head that she actually wants to be near. Ultimately, this phase proves that desire isn't built on what you say, but on the space you leave between your words. Many men think they can talk a woman into liking them more, but attraction actually grows in the spaces where you aren't present. By holding your ground, you allow her to develop a desire that is self-sustained, a feeling that comes from within her rather than a reaction to your latest text. When she starts longing for you in the quiet, that desire becomes much more powerful because it's based on her own realization of your value. You've moved from chasing her for a response to becoming a presence that she feels a genuine internal need to reconnect with. When the period of silence reaches its natural end, it brings with it a powerful revelation of truth. It is important to realize that silence by itself doesn't magically create love or desire where none existed. Instead, it acts like a filter that strips away the distractions. It reveals the honest reality of the connection. It shows who is truly emotionally anchored, the person who can stand on their own, and who is simply reacting out of fear or a need for control. By stopping the constant noise of texts and calls, you stop trying to force an outcome. You finally allow the natural rhythms of attraction to breathe, giving the relationship the space it needs to either grow stronger or show you that it wasn't built to last. If you handle this quiet phase with maturity and restraint, you aren't just playing a part. You are aligning the relationship with reality. You are no longer chasing a ghost or trying to win her back through sheer persistence. Instead, you are mastering the unspoken language of presence, the idea that who you are as a man is felt most deeply when you aren't saying anything at all. You've learned that in the world of high-level attraction, the most powerful move isn't the loudest one, like a desperate phone call or a long explanation. The most powerful move is the quietest one, the ability to wait, to observe, and to remain completely centered in your own life while the other person processes their feelings. When the silence eventually breaks and she finally reaches out, the energy of the conversation will be completely different. It won't feel like a continuation of the old, lopsided routine. Because you held your ground and didn't crumble under the pressure of uncertainty, you have earned a new level of respect that can't be bought or talked into existence. She will sense that you are a man who respects himself enough not to beg for attention, and that realization changes how she views you. You've proven through your actions and your lack of them that you are a solid, independent presence. This newfound respect becomes the foundation for a much stronger, more authentic connection going forward.